George Washington Carver, teacher, scientist, and inventor. Written by Lori Mortenson, illustrated by Niamh O'Connor. George Washington Carver was someone people looked up to. He overcame slavery and became a scientist. When poor black farmers could not grow cotton, George taught them how to grow peanuts. George became famous for finding new ways to use peanuts, but he never cared about money or fame. He committed his life to helping others. This is the story of George Washington Carver. George Washington Carver was born around 1864 on a Missouri farm. George's parents were slaves. His father died in an accident before George was born. When George was a baby, slave stealers took George and his mother from their home. The two were separated, and George never saw his mother again. Several weeks later, Missouri farmers Moses and Susan Carver found George and brought him back home. The Carvers, who disliked slavery, even though they owned slaves, raised George as their son. As a young boy, George loved plants. After doing chores, he often wandered through the woods and meadows. He wondered why some plants were small and others were tall. He wondered why some plants grew in the sun while others grew in the shade. To find the answer, George grew a garden and did many experiments with soil, water, and sunshine. By the time George was 8 years old, he knew a lot about plants. Neighbors called him the plant doctor. George loved to learn. He wanted to go to school, but was not allowed to do so. At that time, the schools near his home were for white children only. When George was about 10 years old, he left home. He walked to a school for black children that was 8 miles away. When George arrived at the school, a black couple took him in. He earned his keep by doing chores. After George learned all he could, he moved to another place in another school. George continued studying plants and became an agricultural scientist. He taught at Iowa State College. The school had a laboratory and a greenhouse. One day, George got a letter from Booker T. Washington. Booker was a former slave and the founder of a college in Alabama called Tuskegee Institute. He begged George to teach at his school. Booker said he had nothing to offer except hard work and a chance to help poor black farmers. George knew this was what he was meant to do. George arrived at Tuskegee Institute in 1896. Everywhere he looked, the land was bare and wasted. Local farmers had grown cotton until the soil had worn out. George taught students and the farmers who asked him for help. He showed them how to feed the soil and rotate crops. When the fields produced cotton again, the people cheered. Sadly, before the farmers could harvest the cotton, beetles ate the cotton plants. Nobody knew how to stop them. George noticed that beetles did not eat peanut plants. He told the farmers to grow peanuts instead. When the farmers harvested the peanuts, however, nobody wanted to buy them. Peanuts were only used for hog feed. George felt terrible about this mistake. He shut himself in his laboratory and did experiments around the clock. In only 2 days, George discovered peanuts were an amazing plant. Peanuts were good for making cooking oil, milk, cheese, and many other things. George shared his discovery about peanuts by inviting businessmen to a special lunch. He served soup, chicken loaf, vegetables, ice cream, and cookies. The guests enjoyed their meal. Afterwards, George told his guests that the lunch had been made from peanuts. As word spread about the amazing plant, people across the country began buying peanuts. In time, George discovered more than 300 ways to use peanuts. He also found many ways to use cowpeas, sweet potatoes, soybeans, and cotton. One peanut product was used to treat thousands of people suffering from polio. Candy bars, peanut butters, dyes, cosmetics, inks, and much more could all be made from peanuts. George's discoveries made him famous throughout the world, but he did not care about fame or money. He believed he was successful only if he helped others. George Washington Carver died on January 5, 1943, at about 80 years of age. He was a true hero. He improved the way people farmed and helped millions of people make better lives for themselves. Hey friends, it's me, Miss Olivia. Thank you so much for listening in to George Washington Carver, teacher, scientist, and inventor. Please support the author and illustrator of this book by purchasing your very own copy. I hope you enjoyed listening to this story as much as I enjoyed reading it to you. Until next time, my name is Miss Olivia. This is Miss Olivia Reads, and I cannot wait for you to join me for another reading adventure very soon. Bye, friends.